All right, first up, Kaleb Johnson, Iowa running back, 6'1", 124 pounds. That would be bad. 224 pounds, 9 5/8 inch hands. He is 21 years old. He'll be 22 in August. In the 40, he ran a 4.57 with a 10-yard split of 1.62. Ouch. Didn't participate in the broad jump or any of the other drills. Last year at Iowa, in 12 games, he had 240 attempts, 1,537 yards rushing, 21 touchdowns, 22 receptions, 188 yards, and 2 additional touchdowns. Iowa last year had the 4th best run blocking offensive line, and the yards after contact for Johnson were 1,060, which was good for 5th in the country.
Kaleb Johnson was an interesting running back for me to watch film on. He's definitely a name where I've seen some people that I trust their analysis.
Absolutely.
I respect their opinion greatly, and all I have him as high as like their 5th running back overall.
Oh, I've seen him as high as 2.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I've seen it.
And
Okay.
I mean, for me personally, I couldn't even get close to there personally. And he's a nice running back. Like, and a lot of people like, and I'm not saying like he's like I've seen him, man. He shows some good patience. You know, he'll let his blocks sit there and simmer down a little bit, and then like he'll pop through. Like he's got some good speed. Like same thing. Like he runs a 4.57. He's just as fast as all those guys that ran 4.4 for me. Definitely at his size, 6'1", 224.
He has odd speed, right? I mean, it's like
Build up.
build up speed. Once he gets going, he can outrun guys. He's not going to get caught much from behind. So that was like a pleasant surprise because I wasn't sure how the long speed was.
It was a pleasure at times to see him too, like make some big players, right? Like he'll take his time, let that block develop, hit that hole fast. I mean, dude, he's shaking linebackers off like dandruff at times, and he's getting these big chunk plays of like 15 plus yards. It's nice, and you think like, oh, a guy for that size, that's what I expect. But overall, my overall take, he does play a little soft for his size. You know, I came away like this guy could be way more decisive, way more aggressive for how big he is. And he doesn't play that way. Even his pass protection, they're okay. His pass catching to me was just okay. You know, I feel like if the ball's not really on him, like I'd have somewhat of a question about him, like really making some nice pass catching plays if it's like essentially off frame. He came about overall though for me, a guy is like, I thought, okay, this is a solid running back, but nothing to the point of where, oh, he's a top 6 guy for me even. Like I would have Dylan Sampson and Cam Scadaboo alone significantly ahead of him. He's more in that range of me of like the Jordan James, the Travis Etienne's, like that kind of upside. And it's easy to say, well, you know, like his upside is size. Obviously he has way more upside. Like, I don't think that's necessarily the case in today's NFL where like you hit like that size gives you that much of an advantage. And most of these solid running backs we see are 5'10", 5'11" anyways. And the way he plays, he's not like 6'1", 225, 230 like Derrick Henry. He doesn't play that strong. And again, that doesn't mean he's not easy to take down, but he's not an aggressive running back.
I agree that for his size, there were times when I wish there was a little bit more power there, and I think he gets caught running a bit high at times. And I think
he runs upright pretty high.
That's kind of, it'll negate a little bit of that power. I do think I think the pass catching stuff I think is fine for him. I don't think it's like a major asset, but I think he can do it. I think you can toss him the ball and he'll be able to get the job done.
A couple drops,
just from like a outlet. You know what I mean? He's never going to be running routes or anything like that. But he's a north-south guy for me. You know what I mean? Like he needs to get going. He needs a few steps. And then if he finds a crease, he's going to make you pay. But he is a guy that I think can take the pounding of giving the ball. You know, you can give him the ball 25 times a game and feel okay about that. And
that's a good way to, I like that description of like a guy that you can get the ball to, he'll take the pounding.
Yeah, he'll take that pounding. He'll wear a defense down, and eventually, if there's a crease, he'll break a run. And that's what he did there at Iowa. I think he can be similar to that in the NFL. Obviously, the long runs in the NFL are harder to come by. So I think some of that stuff is going to be reduced a bit in the NFL for him. But to me, this all kind of equates to him being a guy that's going to need to land in a spot where he can get volume, or he's not going to be a big time fantasy producer. I mean, either way, I don't think he's like a big time efficient guy in the NFL. He's gonna need a coach that I want the ball. You know, a Pete Carroll, for instance. I want to be able to run the ball X amount of times a game. That's my winning formula, and then we're going to turn around and do play action off of that. You know, one of those type of guys. I think that's what Kaleb Johnson, if he finds himself in a situation like that, that's where he's at his best. That's where he can maybe reach borderline running back one numbers. I mean, it would have to be insane.
Perfect situation.
Like Najee Harris with Big Ben that one year to get into like a top end running back.
Was running back 3 because he just 60, 70 some catches.
Right. Which you would never really think that's possible for a guy like Kaleb Johnson, but in the perfect scenario, maybe that could be a thing. But most of the time I think he's going to be a running back 2. I think that's kind of how I see him.
He's my running back 6 overall, but he only has a less than a half point difference than running back 10.
Yeah.
So he is very much so in that tier. Cam Scadaboo kind of gets his own mini tier for me. Then you've got the 3 guys in Travion, Omarion, and Quinshawn, and then Ashton Genty is in his own tier. But watching him at Iowa, he benefited from some huge holes.
Yep.
Like there was some really, really nice run blocking.
4th best. Yep.
And you would watch it and you'd be like, you don't knock a guy for that. Like that's great for him. I'm happy for him. But it's hard to really determine how much of that did you earn, how much of that did your offensive line earn you. Like sometimes that's hard. If you were to put Cam Scadaboo in this offense and you were to put Kaleb Johnson in the Arizona State offense, what would things look like? Right. To me, I think you would see a lot more out of Cam than you got out of Kaleb Johnson this year. I think he's adequate in a lot of areas. I think he has specifically better second level vision than he does first level. But like I said, it's kind of hard to tell at times. But I do think he's good at the second level, kind of being able to see opportunities. And for a guy that's not like crazy fast, he does at times like beat angles. And so I do think he's got a little bit better speed and he can vary his speed a little bit. So he's definitely a nice player. Like he's a really solid running back. And for him to be, a running back 6 here, he would be much higher in other classes maybe. But when we start comparing him, a guy that's a similar size and build and role in the NFL to Hampton and Judkins, I just don't think there's much of a comparison. I think those 2 guys are much better all around backs than he is. To me, he's a lot like Ramondre Stevenson with maybe a little bit more juice.
What is his score compared to Ollie Gordon for you?
So Kaleb has a 73.4 and he's running back 6. All the way down at running back now 13 for me, 72.35. So
it's still not
almost a point, like barely a point over a point. So that's the thing. Like, I think what you get in that range for me, there's a lot of guys that I'm like, yeah, they do. Maybe some of them do different things, but I don't think any of them are drastically better running backs than others.
Yeah. And I came away thinking how Matt said as well, like from a PPR standpoint, like kind of said before, like, he's got a nice skill set, but from a fantasy football upside, I don't see a ton. He falls into this, like I said, even for you, running back 6, there's no way he could be able to get there for me at all. Like I would much rather just have Dylan Sampson and Kaleb Johnson. He just right now falls in that category. I mentioned a guy like Jordan James, like with this PPR upside. Like where all those guys are in a tier, I think it's a really wind up on draft capital. And if that guy with the PPR upside has any path to fill that role, I'd much rather just gamble on that guy.
One thing I forgot to mention, and Matt said it in his notes, but I do want to highlight this. This was something I kind of noticed on tape, and this is why I would especially worry if he does not go to a place with a good offensive line. 1.62 10-yard split, the slowest in the class. So that is a big deal for me. I especially out of my wide receivers and my running backs, I really want to see what that 10-yard split is, because that's how quickly do you operate right now. And those are really important skills for those positions. So that is something that worries me a little bit. If it's not like a really good offensive line, is he going to have the initial burst to be able to get past penetrating defenders and things like that?
Let's touch on that just for a second, because I always kind of have questions, especially guys like this that run up they're a little bit upper, like they run more upright. Mm-hmm. Like the art of running a 40-yard dash. These guys are never going to have to get in a 3-point stance unless you're you know what I mean? Unless you're a D end.
Sure.
You're never going to be exploding out of that position in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yes, I think 10-yard splits are extremely important because it does show your initial burst and explosiveness. But are there sometimes guys that maybe don't?
It could be false a little bit for them.
Maybe don't have the art of you gotta power out of that thing in a certain way and then kind of start raising yourself up as you go, and you're almost just getting elevated and you get to that 40.
What I'll say on that because I agree that like it is not the same thing at all.
Right.
But my counterpoint to that would be these guys are trying to earn millions of dollars.
They better
and they're
learn this
getting
skill.
trained.
Yeah.
Like, so if they can't figure it out,
They're listening to Michael Jackson.
then like, is that like, why is that? Like, why are you not figuring that out? Why are you not improving on that? So like, yes, but also
Yes and no.
No.
Right. If you just with no training, we're like, go run a 40.
Yeah.
Then
that's a bigger part of
then
it.
that excuse might be valid. Okay. It's always one of those things like in the back of my head, like, do some guys just suck at running this 40-yard dash? And
do.
I think yes is the answer for some of that.
And he ran a 4.57, so you can see his build-up speed was good.
Right. And that's what comes up on tape. Like
Yeah.
he looks good when he finds a crease, when he finds a lane and gets going, he does look good. So I don't think that the 1.62 is fake because you see it on tape as well. Mm-hmm. But I just want to make sure that people don't just look at those numbers and go, this guy's slow. Because sometimes it's a false reading. You know what I mean? Sometimes the tape says one thing and
It's true. And we'll even talk about a few
those
guys.
numbers say another thing.
That's why I just watched the tape and everything else is like, okay.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
I have him as a big back, really good feet, but there's just something missing with him. Like, I don't understand how some people have him in the top 3 backs in this class. With how good this class is, I just don't see it. I went back. He was the first running back I graded. I went back and watched him a little more before tonight, and I still just landed at a 70.7. Like, I have him just in a tier of like 9 other running backs in this class. And I mean, when I watch him, I'm like he breaks tackles, but it looks like he's not trying. Like, I don't know. He's just a weird back to watch. Like, there's something there that just doesn't click for me. But I think he'll probably end up getting early day 3 capital if I were to guess. And
so you don't think he's going to go day 2? Because I think he'll end up going day 2.
I don't.
I mean, just based on
Remember when they were talking about him as a round 1
him,
guy?
Based on his grade, I don't think he's going to go. Just how deep this class is, but I wouldn't be surprised if he went round 3. Depends on landing spot. So not a bad grade from me, just not with consensus. So
True.
And they did run a lot of inside zone there. That was kind of like the basis of their, at least the runs that he did. 191,
very young.
191 zones runs for him, only 48 of the gap scheme. So to your point about the vision inside, like that's to be. I mean, I saw him run in the back of his offensive lineman at least a couple times. I was like, I wrote a note like maybe just a bad game. It was really just one kind of isolated game that I saw him do that in. So I don't know. There is something about him that I can't quite figure out.
It gives me the vibe of Braylon Allen. like everybody like loved him, and like then just being like the backup to Breece Hall. But then even with an opportunity, like, wow, he looked better than I thought he would look.
And that's the thing.
Not surprised.
And that's the thing. Like I think he's better than. I think he might be a little bit better than Braylon Allen was. So what
was your score?
It was like a 73.
Okay, so we're in a pretty similar spot.
So I don't think he's bad. I do agree that maybe that I think there's a spot for him to succeed. Mm-hmm. If he's not in that spot, I think he's going to be more like a borderline running back 2, running back 3. If he gets a lot of volume, he can go up to that running back 1-ish.
Only 21.5 right now too.
If he ended up being solid, it wouldn't surprise me. And I think he's fine. I think he's going to be definitely good for an NFL team. But for my dynasty rosters, I view him as probably less than a 50% chance that he's going to be viable for my roster.
Well, I mean, my comp for him is Najee Harris, and a guy that probably needs a really good offensive line in front of him. He's not, he can get caught in the backfield and drop for a loss pretty easily if things don't go his way. And I feel like Kaleb Johnson's that type of guy as well. But if he gets in the open field, he's big enough, he's strong enough, he's fast enough that he can make some good things happen once he's kind of going.
Yeah, Najee's way better pass catcher. But yeah,
agreed. He is a better pass catcher.
All right.